He stared at the grainy motel photos on the PI's report. His wife's smile, her hands tangled in another man's hair, the betrayal clearer than daylight. In that moment, something inside him snapped. The pain, the confusion, the disbelief. All of it hardened into one cold, crystal-clear thought. It was time for justice. And when he was done, she wouldn't be the only one who paid. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, if you've ever wanted to see karma delivered with surgical precision, then hit that like button, subscribe and buckle up. Because this isn't just a story about cheating. It's a story about a man who turned heartbreak into the most devastating revenge you've ever heard. It all started in the early 2000s, before smartphones tracked every move, before social media left trails of betrayal. Life seemed simple back then. And for David, a devoted husband and father of two, it was supposed to be perfect. He and Melissa had been married for nearly a decade. They had two beautiful kids, ages 4 and 6, and a cozy home filled with laughter and routine. David worked hard to provide, and Melissa, who worked part-time, was often home with the children. They weren't rich, but they had built a life together, one based on trust, love, and shared dreams. At least, that's what David thought. The first signs of betrayal. It started as a whisper, a faint, nagging feeling that something was off. The kids, in their innocent honesty, mentioned something odd during dinner one night. "Mommy took us to Grandma and Grandpa's again today." David blinked. Melissa's parents lived nearly 90 minutes away, far enough that visits were usually reserved for weekends or holidays. But lately the kids were mentioning those visits 2-3 times a week. Too often. When David asked Melissa about it, she shrugged it off with a laugh. "Oh, they just love spending time with their grandparents," she said, brushing it aside like it was nothing. But Melissa was a terrible liar. Her voice wavered. She wouldn't meet his eyes. And that whisper in David's gut. It grew louder. The investigation begins. David decided to test a theory. Quietly, without a word. He started writing down the odometer readings on Melissa's car before and after she left. And over the next few weeks, the numbers didn't lie. She was driving hundreds of miles more than usual. 400 extra miles every week. His heart sank. Something was going on. But what? Then fate intervened. One afternoon, David sat down at their home computer. And there it was. A yellow sticky note, carelessly left next to the keyboard. On it, Melissa's AOL password, scribbled in her handwriting. His hands shook as he typed it in. His pulse hammered in his ears. And with a few clicks, the truth unraveled before his eyes. The emails were damning. Exchanges between Melissa and her college best friend, laughing, gossiping, and talking openly about how Melissa had been reconnecting with an old high school boyfriend, behind David's back. They mocked the man's wife, calling her a fat, boring housewife, and joked about their secret lunches, their motel rendezvous, their plans for next time. David printed the emails, his hands trembling with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. But he wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not without more proof. Enter the private investigator. David called an old friend, a police officer, who put him in touch with a retired detective-turned-private investigator named Ron. Ron was sharp, discreet, and ruthless. David handed him the emails, shared his suspicions, and waited. Weeks later, Ron delivered a thick envelope that changed everything. Inside, detailed reports, photos, timestamps, locations. Every sordid detail. Melissa would drop the kids at her parents', meet the man, Bob, for lunch, and then check into a rundown roadside motel for hours. Afterward, she'd pick up the kids and come home, smiling like nothing had happened. David stared at the photos for a long time. The woman he had trusted with everything was gone. The breaking point. David's decision was swift and final. He had grown up in a home shattered by infidelity. His parents' betrayals had left scars that still ached. He swore he'd never do the same to his children. Melissa had made that decision for him. David contacted a divorce lawyer. But before he filed, he had one more request for Ron. Find out everything about Bob. Bob's secret life. Ron dug deep, and what he found was poetic. Bob was married. He had 3 kids. He was the vice president of sales for a company owned by, wait for it, his father-in-law. His entire career, his lifestyle, his family, all tied to the people he was betraying. David's plan began to take shape. The trap is set. Weeks later, everything was in place. The legal papers were signed and sealed. The PI's reports were printed in duplicate. All that remained was the delivery. On a crisp Wednesday morning, while Melissa was at work, a courier walked into her office and placed a manila envelope on her desk. Inside, the divorce papers, filed, irreversible. At the same time, across town, Ron knocked on a door and handed another envelope, this one filled with photographs, emails, and evidence, to Bob's unsuspecting wife. David didn't have to say a word. He let the truth do the talking. The fallout. Melissa's betrayal meant nothing legally. But Bob's life? That was a different story. Bob's wife didn't waste a second. She emptied their joint accounts, took the kids, and vanished. When her father, Bob's boss, found out, Bob was fired on the spot. And because Bob and his wife had been living in a house owned by her family, he was also evicted within days. Then came the divorce. And it was brutal. Court filings became public record. Accusations, restraining orders, police reports. During one confrontation, Bob showed up at the family home, shouting and threatening, until his brother-in-law broke his nose. That led to criminal charges, jail time, and the complete collapse of whatever life he'd built. The man who once smirked at his wife's cruel jokes about another woman's weight was left with nothing. Aftermath. Bob disappeared. Gone from social media, gone from the city. Rumor had it he'd fled the state entirely, chasing scraps of work to stay afloat. His ex-wife thrived. She took a job at her father's company and eventually took over when he retired. As for David, he finalized the divorce with quiet dignity. He and Melissa co-parented peacefully for the kids' sake, but the trust, the love, was gone forever. And once their children grew up, he cut off all contact. He didn't hate her. Hate takes energy, and Melissa wasn't worth any more of his. In the end, David never yelled. He never begged. He never lowered himself to her level. Instead, he let the truth dismantle 2 people who thought they could destroy his life and walk away untouched. Melissa lost the man she threw her marriage away for. And Bob, he lost everything. His job, his family, his home, and his dignity. And David, he walked away free. Heartbroken, yes, but also victorious. Because in the face of betrayal, he refused to be a victim. Betrayal cuts deep, shatters your trust, your faith, even your sense of self. But sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't loud or violent. It's silent, calculated, and devastating. And the best part, you never have to lift a finger. You just let karma finish what they started. Don't forget to subscribe this channel if you like that video.